the Indus Valley, southern Pakistan. In 1922, an officer with an Indian Archaeological Survey Group discovered the ruins of an ancient city known as Mohenjo-daro. According to mainstream archaeologists, the city, whose name means Mound of the Dead, had flourished between 2600 and 1900 BC. However, scientists in Pakistan have suggested Mohenjo-daro is much older. Mainstream archaeologists believe the city was abandoned as a result of climatic changes, or possibly a decrease in trade. But when the ruins of Mohenjo-daro were discovered in the 1920s, 44 skeletons were found lying face down in the street, many holding hands. Their faces and body positioning suggested they suffered a sudden, violent death.
You have a culture of people who literally were lying dead in the street. Archaeologists have found human remains, and something big has happened to these people.
What in fact did happen to the people of Mohenjo-daro? Why is there evidence that wild animals avoided scavenging their remains? And why, even after thousands of years, had their bones not decayed?
In certain areas of that site, you find increased levels of radiation. And radiation exists all over the place. When all of a sudden you have higher levels of radiation in certain areas of the world, the question arises, why?
Is it possible that Mohenjo-daro was one of the cities mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita? A city that suffered the equivalent of a sudden atomic attack. In his 1979 book, Atomic Destruction in 2000 BC, British researcher David Davenport claimed to have found a 50-yard-wide epicenter at Mohenjo-daro, where everything appeared to have been fused through a transformative process known as vitrification.
Vitrification is a process in which regular type stone gets molten into a magma state, and then it hardens again. But once the stone is hardened again, it feels like glass. At Mohenjo-daro, we find evidence of vitrification, which could have only been achieved if the material was exposed to extreme heat by some type of a blast.
When British and Indian and Pakistani archaeologists began doing excavations in the Sindh desert on the borders of India and Pakistan in the late 1940s and early 1950s, what they found in these cities, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Kotdiji, was archaeological evidence to show there were apparently atomic weapons, only it happened in ancient times. There's other evidence in parts of Africa and the Middle East where it would seem to be like some sort of atomic explosion had taken place there and had turned the desert sand into glass. And that's exactly what happened at Alamogordo in New Mexico when they detonated the first atom bomb in the desert.
Could the strange ruins found in the Indus Valley really contain evidence of an ancient atomic explosion? If so, where did these powerful weapons come from? Who was using them, and why?
In the ancient Indian texts themselves, it says, and I quote, "At one point, 3 giant cities were orbiting the earth." And those giant cities were often described as being made of gleaming metal and iron. And at one point, those 3 cities went to war with each other. And it's described how the gods threw weapons at each other, destroying those cities that they all went up in